Hi, you're watching Reddit Confessions. Tonight's story starts after the goodbye, when everything's already broken, and you're the only one still pretending it isn't. The first thing I noticed was the smell. Something floral, sweet, and unfamiliar clinging to the sheets like guilt with a perfume label. I hadn't slept. Again. She was already up, standing by the mirror with her back to me, adjusting earrings I'd never seen before, wearing a blouse that still had the store creases in it. I didn't say a word. I just watched her, like a stranger watching a stranger. She said, "Don't wait up tonight. Not can you pick up dinner, not how did you sleep, just that." I nodded. I always nod. It's my default defense mechanism. If nodding were an Olympic sport, I'd have medals from every year of this marriage. She walked out the door without looking back. That's when I checked the laundry basket. Not because I was looking for proof, but because I wanted to be wrong. There were 2 wine-stained napkins. One wasn't ours. A single cufflink. A receipt from a rooftop bar neither of us had ever been to. Time-stamped from 2 nights ago. The same night she claimed she was with her sister at home with a stomach bug. I sat on the edge of the bed for 22 minutes, counting. Yes, I counted. Because doing math felt easier than feeling anything. I made coffee. Burnt toast. Took a shower but stood under the water so long it went cold. I went to work and smiled at people who didn't know they were speaking to someone whose heart had just quietly stopped beating. Around 3:14 p.m., I got a message from her. "We need to talk tonight. Please be home." That was new. She usually didn't ask. She just vanished. I cleaned up before she got back. Not the house myself. Tried to look like someone worth having a hard conversation with. Put on cologne she once said reminded her of our first date. Wore the sweater she called her favorite back when she still used the word favorite to describe things about me. She walked in around 8. Hair perfect. Shoes expensive. She didn't even take off her coat. I tried to smile. She didn't sit down. Just leaned against the wall and said it. Softly. Calmly. Like she was giving bad news to a customer. No. That's it. Just no. No to the second chance I never officially asked for. No to the man I've been trying to become. No to us. I didn't argue. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I smiled because it was the only thing I had left that felt like mine, and I walked into the hallway without closing the door behind me. I didn't pack a bag. I didn't look back. I just walked. I didn't go far. Just down the block to the same diner I always end up at when my world collapses quietly. You wouldn't look twice at the place. Fluorescent lights, torn vinyl booths, a waitress named Gwen who never smiles unless you're under 5 years old or carrying a dog. I sat in the corner booth, the one next to the flickering jukebox, and ordered a grilled cheese I wouldn't eat. Across from me, the seat stayed empty. It always does. But tonight it felt heavier than usual. Like it knew. Like it was mocking me. I kept checking my phone. Not because I expected her to call, but because part of me still needed her to. It stayed silent except for one alert. A bank charge from earlier that afternoon. A boutique I'd never heard of. $286. Lingerie, maybe? Jewelry? Not for me, obviously. I haven't seen her wear anything for me in months. Years, maybe. I tried to replay our last real conversation in my head. I couldn't even remember when it was. Was it the time I asked if she wanted to go upstate for the weekend and she shrugged without looking up from her phone? Or the time she said, "I'm tired," and I said, "Me too." But we were talking about completely different things? I used to be able to make her laugh. I mean really laugh, the kind that comes out of nowhere and makes you snort. The kind that makes strangers smile just hearing it. I haven't heard it in so long, I started wondering if I ever really did, or if I imagined it to survive the quiet. By the time Gwen came to refill my coffee, I had already rehearsed what I'd say when I got home. I keep it simple. I'd ask for honesty. I'd beg just once, for something real even if it hurt. But I didn't go home. Instead, I pulled out my phone and searched for one name, Lucas. I'd seen it pop up on her screen weeks ago, half covered by her hand. I hadn't said anything. Just like I hadn't said anything about the nights she came home smiling at something I'd never said. I found his Instagram. Of course I did. He was the kind of guy who documents every sunset and captions it like a Hallmark card. His latest post? A wine glass held against a city skyline. Her coat, the new one, barely visible in the reflection. So that was it. The no wasn't just an end. It was a handoff. I left the diner and walked until the streetlights changed 3 times without me noticing. I didn't cry. That would have made it feel like a movie. This wasn't a movie. It was the slowest kind of heartbreak. The kind where you're still halfway in love with someone who's already moved on without saying goodbye. By midnight, I found myself outside our building again. The lights were off in the apartment. Her shoes were by the door. She was home. Maybe he was too. I turned around and went back to the sidewalk. The city was cold, but it was honest. And right now, that was more than I could say for the person I'd shared 9 years and 3 couches with. I didn't know where I was going yet, but for the first time in months, I knew I wasn't going back. I didn't sleep that night. I walked until my legs gave out and ended up on a bench outside a closed bookstore, using my jacket as a blanket and my phone as a light. I wasn't homeless, not yet. But emotionally, I'd been evicted long ago. I watched the city yawn into morning. A jogger passed me twice. The second time, he gave me that look. Half pity, half curiosity. Like I was a warning sign of what happens when a man loses everything but still doesn't scream. By 6:30 a.m., I was sitting on the steps of my office building. Not because I was eager to work, but because I had nowhere else to go. I showered in the gym downstairs, using off-brand shampoo that smelled like citrus and regret. I put on the same wrinkled shirt from yesterday. No one noticed. Or if they did, they didn't ask. That's the thing about being quiet and polite your whole life. People assume you're fine until you vanish. I opened my laptop, stared at my inbox, and just let the noise of the office numb me. Around 11, something unexpected happened. My phone buzzed. Not with a spam call, not with a bank notification, but a text from Nell. My heart stuttered before I read it. But then I saw it. Last night was incredible. I'm still smiling. Followed by a winking face. It wasn't meant for me. She must have sent it to the wrong contact. And now, somehow, I was the one holding evidence of a joy I wasn't invited to. I stared at the message for a full minute before I typed anything. But I didn't send a response. I just pressed the power button and shut the screen black. There was nothing left to say that wouldn't make me smaller. By lunchtime, I left the office and took the train 2 towns over to visit my sister, Delia. She's the only one in my family who still talks to me regularly. I think she always felt sorry for me. Maybe because I was the quiet one, the kid who cried too easily and laughed too softly. I didn't tell her much, just that Nell and I were working through something. She looked at me like she already knew. Delia made tea and set out those almond cookies she keeps in the freezer for guests she doesn't like. I guess I'd fallen into that category now. A brother who shows up without warning, looking like he'd slept on a sidewalk and lost a bet with life. I saw her, Delia said, breaking the silence. Last weekend. She was at the train station. With someone. I didn't ask for details. But I didn't stop her either. He was tall. 10. Looked like the kind of guy who names his car. She was laughing, Merritt. Not fake laughing. Like glowing. I didn't say anything. Just sipped my tea like it might fix the leak in my chest. Later that night, I got another text from Nell. I'm sorry. That message wasn't for you. Hope you're okay. No explanation. No apology for the cheating, just for the accidental delivery. I replied finally. I'm not okay, but I will be. One day. Not because of you. In spite of you. I didn't wait for a reply. I blocked the number. Then I powered down my phone and let the silence wrap around me like a blanket I never asked for. That was the first time in years I felt something like peace. Not joy, not closure, but peace. 2 days after I blocked her number, I sat in a small public library across town, scribbling into a spiral-bound notebook like some melodramatic teenager who thought heartbreak made him a poet. It was ridiculous, but I couldn't stop myself. I needed to pour everything somewhere. My head was too crowded, and my heart kept tripping over memories it wasn't ready to let go of. I started writing her a letter. Not to send, just to get it out of me. I wrote about the first time I saw her in that stupid sunflower dress, The one she claimed was hideous but comfortable. I wrote about the night I had the flu and she spoon-fed me soup like I was breakable. I wrote about the sound of her yawning at 3 a.m., the weird lopsided way she tied her shoelaces, the way she used to draw little hearts next to my name when she left notes in my lunch bag. And then I wrote about the other things, the silences that grew louder, the nights she turned away when I reached for her, the look in her eyes the moment she said no. Not angry, not sad, just indifferent. That part hurt the most, like I wasn't even worth the decency of emotion. Halfway through writing, I realized I wasn't angry. I was humiliated, like the punchline of a joke everyone got but me. I'd spent years defending her to myself, saying things like, she's just stressed, or maybe I'm not giving her enough, while she was probably out buying wine glasses with a man who actually listened when she talked about architecture or veganism or whatever she decided was her identity this month. And yet, even knowing that, part of me still missed her. I know how pathetic that sounds. But love doesn't have an off switch, especially when you're someone like me, the kind of guy who dives headfirst while the other person's still checking the water temperature. I folded the letter neatly, like it meant something, and tucked it inside a book I had no intention of checking out. Still there, probably, between pages 104 and 105 of The Secret Life of Trees. I liked the irony, hiding a dying love letter inside a book about how trees communicate underground, invisible but still alive. That night, I returned to the apartment to grab the last of my things. She wasn't home. The living room still smelled like her perfume, and her playlist was softly humming from the Bluetooth speaker. That same annoying acoustic version of Can't Help Falling in Love she played when she felt nostalgic. The bed was made, everything in place. My side of the closet was already empty, but on the table, I saw something new: 2 wine glasses and an empty bottle of red. She hadn't even bothered to clean up after him. That was the final slap. Not the affair. Not the goodbye. The casualness. The evidence left out, like I was too unimportant to hide the truth from anymore. I grabbed the last box, paused for a moment, then walked out. But just before I closed the door, I did something petty. Something I'm not proud of. I unplugged the speaker. Let the silence take over. Because if she was going to forget me that easily, the least I could do was take the music with me. The week after I left, I became a ghost in my own life. I moved into a month-to-month rental with peeling wallpaper, a fridge that hummed louder than my thoughts, and a view of a brick wall that felt more honest than anything I'd seen in months. I didn't unpack, just dumped the boxes in the corner and slept on top of the bedspread like a man waiting to disappear. I didn't tell many people what happened. Some friends assumed we were taking space or working things out, and I didn't correct them. Others had seen it coming and avoided me entirely, like heartbreak was contagious. But the worst was my mom. She called the day after I moved in and asked if Nell and I would be visiting for Thanksgiving. I told her no. I didn't give her a reason. She was quiet for a second, then just said, "Okay, sweetheart," in that voice that carried more grief than questions. I started doing strange things, like walking through grocery stores with no list, just wandering the aisles as if something on the shelf might replace the ache in my chest. I went to the dog park even though I don't own a dog. I just liked watching something happy. I read random Yelp reviews from restaurants I'd never go to, imagining lives that weren't mine. And sometimes, when I couldn't help it, I'd check her social media from a burner account I swore I'd never create. That's how I saw it, the photo. Nell, smiling, at a candlelit table, across from him. The caption wasn't hers. It was his. Couldn't have asked for a better night. A simple sentence. Casual. Disposable. But I stared at it like it was an obituary. Because it was. Mine. She was wearing the necklace I gave her on our 3rd anniversary. The one she said made her feel seen. Now it made her glow for someone else. That same night, around 9:12 p.m., I got a text from an unknown number. "Hey Merritt, I know this is weird, but I thought you should hear it from me. I didn't know she was married. She told me you two were done months ago. I only found out after the dinner. I'm sorry, man." It was him. Lucas. I froze. For a second, I thought it was a prank, or some kind of twisted gloating. But the way it was worded, no arrogance, no defensiveness. It felt genuine. I didn't reply, not because I didn't have anything to say, but because nothing I could type would unwrite the damage. And oddly enough, I wasn't mad at him. He didn't know me loyalty. She did. That was the night I finally cried. Not a few tears. The kind of crying that takes the air out of your lungs. The kind that makes you sound like a child begging the world to rewind. I cried until I threw up in the sink. Then I sat on the bathroom floor and stared at the cracked tile, wondering how I'd gone from planning a vacation with my wife to weeping over her boyfriend's dinner post. The next morning, I found a note on my door. Not from Nell. From my neighbor. Her name was Ramona. We'd never spoken before. It read, "I hear everything through these walls. I don't know what you're going through, but if you ever need a distraction, I make really bad lasagna and watch old crime documentaries every Thursday. No pressure. Just noise and food." I stared at the note for a long time. Then I laughed. Actually laughed. Because for the first time in weeks, someone offered me something that didn't come with a lie. I showed up at Ramona's door with a bottle of generic red wine and no expectations. I don't know what possessed me to go. Maybe it was the silence in my apartment. Maybe the smell of boxed noodles and burnt marinara seeping through the wall. Maybe it was just the idea that someone, even out of pity, had made space for me in their world. She opened the door wearing flannel pajama pants and a t-shirt that said, "I'm only here for the snacks. No makeup, no small talk. Just a nod and a wave toward the couch." I didn't realize how much I needed that. The lasagna was, in fact, terrible. Soggy in the middle and burnt on the edges. But it was warm and messy and real, which made it better than anything I'd eaten alone in weeks. We watched some dated true crime show where the reenactments were so bad we couldn't stop laughing. That's when I realized I hadn't laughed out loud since Nell left. Not once. Not until that moment when Ramona said, "That actor looks like a wax figure of guilt." And I nearly choked on a chunk of tomato that tasted like regret. She didn't ask me questions. Not right away. She let me talk when I was ready. And when I finally did, I expected to feel embarrassed. A grown man unloading a sob story to a woman who barely knew his name. But she didn't judge. Didn't even flinch when I told her about the message meant for someone else. About Nell wearing the necklace I gave her while smiling at another man. About the fact that even after all of it, I still checked her socials just to see if she seemed happy without me. Ramona just listened. Not the fake, nod-along kind of listening. She really heard me. Then she said, "You know what no one tells you? Being the one who stays faithful, that doesn't make you weak. It makes you decent. And decent people are rare." That one sentence cracked something in me, because I'd been walking around feeling like a fool. Like a man who'd lost because he didn't see it coming. But maybe I hadn't lost. Maybe I just gave my loyalty to the wrong person. Maybe that didn't make me pathetic, just misplaced. After the show ended, I offered to help with the dishes. She waved me off and said, "Next time, next time." I hadn't heard those words in so long. They sounded foreign. Back in my apartment, the air felt different. Not better, not healed, just less hollow. I didn't cry that night. I didn't scroll through old photos. I didn't rehearse what I would say if Nell ever tried to come back. I just sat with myself and let the silence exist without trying to fix it. The next morning, I found a voicemail on my burner phone. I never used it unless I was checking to see what I didn't want to see. It was from Nell. Short. Shaky. "I'm sorry, Merritt. I made a mistake. I thought I knew what I wanted. I don't know anymore. If you ever want to talk, I miss you." For a brief second, I felt everything at once. That pull toward the familiar. That ache for the woman I used to know. The habit of reaching back just because it's easier than building something new. But then I remembered Ramona. Her bad lasagna. Her honesty. The sound of my own laughter returning, if only for a moment. I deleted the voicemail. Not out of anger, but because I was done being her second option. 2 weeks passed before I saw her again. It wasn't planned. I wasn't lurking or snooping or anything pathetic like that. It just happened. I was walking down Main Street with a small box of pastries. Ramona had a thing for overly sweet lemon bars, and I figured it was time I returned the lasagna favor. I wasn't thinking about Nell at all. Until she appeared. She stepped out of a boutique. Same lazy confidence. Sunglasses on her head like a crown. Phone in one hand. A sleek paper bag in the other. She didn't see me at first. And part of me wanted to duck into the nearest alley and vanish. But I didn't. I kept walking. We almost passed like strangers until she caught a glimpse of me. Merritt. She said it like a question. Like my name had somehow become a forgotten word. I stopped. Nodded. Hey. For a moment, she looked thrown off. As if I wasn't where I was supposed to be. Maybe in her mind, I'd melted away into grief or bitterness. Instead, I was standing in front of her, very much alive and holding lemon bars. You look different, she said, her voice unsure. Thinner. I shrugged. Been walking a lot. We stood there in silence, just two people pretending we hadn't burned down a life together. She glanced at the pastry box. Is that for someone? Could have lied. Could have made her jealous. But I didn't need to. Yeah, I said. A friend. Her face twitched. Something unreadable. Can we talk? She asked. Like really talk? I hesitated, then gestured to the bench nearby. We sat, and she launched into the kind of apology that sounds like it was rehearsed in front of a mirror. She said she was confused, scared, lonely. She said she didn't know how to ask for what she needed, that she didn't expect Lucas to be anything serious, that it all spiraled. She apologized for not being honest, for making me doubt myself, for leaving me in silence instead of offering a shred of closure. I listened. I really did. Not out of hope, but because I needed to hear it. Not for her, for me. When she finished, she waited for me to say something, to ask questions, maybe to offer her a thread of redemption. But I didn't. Instead, I said something she probably never expected to hear from me. I forgive you. She blinked. You do? Yeah, I said. But that doesn't mean I want anything from you. Forgiveness isn't a door opening. It's just me not carrying the weight anymore. She looked stunned. I think she was hoping for some version of the old Merritt, the guy who would have begged, asked what she needed, told her we could fix it. But he wasn't there anymore. Before she could respond, I stood up. I hope you find what you're looking for, I said. Truly. I just know it's not me anymore. Then I walked away, lemon bars still in hand, feeling more whole than I had in months. When I got to Ramona's door, she opened it before I knocked. Were you followed by ghosts? She asked, teasing. Something like that, I said, handing her the box. We didn't talk about it. She didn't ask, and I didn't need to explain. We just sat on the couch, watching another terrible documentary, eating sugar that stuck to our fingers. That night, for the first time in forever, I slept with both eyes closed. 3 months later, my apartment felt more like home than anything I ever had with Nell. It still had its quirks. The fridge moaned like it was haunted, the hot water had commitment issues, and the windows refused to shut properly. But it was mine. And more importantly, I was mine again. That feeling, that quiet confidence, had taken longer to return than I care to admit. Ramona and I never defined what we were. And that was the beauty of it. We were just two broken people who made space for each other without expectation. Some nights we watched documentaries. Other nights we talked about the lives we almost lived. Sometimes we said nothing and just existed in the same room, breathing in sync. One Saturday, she surprised me with a picnic in the tiniest park in the city. 2 sandwiches, off-brand soda, and a deck of trivia cards from a thrift store. It was ridiculous and perfect. She asked me a question from the deck without even looking at the category. What's one thing you know now that you wish you knew then? I didn't even need a second to think. That loving someone harder won't make them stay, but loving yourself might finally help you leave. She just smiled, like I'd passed some unspoken test. That moment, sitting there on a plaid blanket with cheap food and someone who never tried to fix me, it felt like peace. Not the dramatic, sweeping kind you see in movies, just soft, earned calm. A few weeks later, I finally cleaned out the last box from storage. At the bottom, I found a photo of Nell and me from our 2nd anniversary. We were laughing about something. Probably nothing. I almost tossed it, but instead, I placed it in a small envelope, scribbled "Thanks for the lesson" on the front, and dropped it in a donation bin. Maybe someone will frame it. Maybe it'll just disappear. Either way, I was done holding on. That night, I looked at myself in the mirror and smiled. Not to convince anyone. Not to hide anything. Just because it was real. And this time, I wasn't smiling through the pain. I was smiling because I'd finally healed. Have you ever had a moment when you realized you were finally free? Even if it hurt to get there? Tell us about it in the comments below. We'd love to hear what moment from this story hit you the hardest. And don't forget, subscribe for more powerful stories, only here on Reddit Confessions.